Well, I worked with The Who on Quadrophenia, and I worked also on the Tommy film soundtrack, not the original recording of Tommy. And it was an unbelievable experience, the best of my life, I think. I hadn't done that many albums as an engineer, and I had built the studio for Ronnie Lane of the Faces rock group. And Ronnie Lane and Pete Townsend were buds. Unfortunately, Ronnie died a few years ago. But they were both followers of Meher Baba. They were spiritually connected. And I built this studio for Ronnie Lane, a mobile studio in an Airstream trailer. And I got very lucky because The Who had built a studio in Battersea in London, but the control room wasn't finished yet. So the studio part was all finished, but they were still waiting for parts or something in the studio, in the control room. So they suggested they use Ronnie Lane's mobile to cut the tracks. And then by that time, the control room would have been finished. And who better to get to use as an engineer but the guy who built it? So that's how I got to work on Quadrophenia. Originally, they were just going to have me work with the mobile, but they liked my work, so they kept me for the whole album and for more. That took 8 months, that album. That was quite an undertaking, including all sorts of sound effects. In fact, I used that mobile studio to go to Cornwall to record quadrophonic sea noise, because the original concept was to do a quadrophonic album, and that got blown out of the water, but it was pretty cool. So that was an amazing experience. And the Tommy film, again, I had never done a film before. And the difference with the Tommy film, I guess, was the fact that we recorded the whole thing before anything was shot. And there was no spoken word in the film. It was all singing. So Ken Russell, the director, was in the studio the whole time we were cutting the tracks, you know, envisioning how he was going to shoot it. And of course, there was a lot of things that we had to loop and a lot of things we had to cut out and to record new incidental music as we went along. And that was another almost a year project.
You talk about your woman, I wish you could see mine. You talk about your woman, I wish you could see mine. Every time she starts to love, she brings eyesight to the blind. Oh yeah.
By the time we did the months of recording, and then they started shooting the film, and they used a Nagra ice to make them tapes that they just use for playback. And then they'd come back with changes we needed to make, and so that was 2 whole years there I worked with The Who, and on just those 2 projects. And then in the end, of course, we were rushed for time. So Pete did the film mix at Twickenham Studios, I think, and I did the album mix at Air Studios. So, but we had to send the tapes back and forth because we didn't want to go a generation on the tapes, you know, so we'd do different songs, different days. So I'd get the tapes for that song, and he'd get the tapes for this song. And it was wild.